CDL Practice Test, Texas, Air Brake, Part 8. Question number 188. When only the tractor is equipped with an anti-lock braking system, ABS, A. There is an increased risk of jackknifing, B. The brakes will not work as effectively as they would without ABS, C. The brakes will become more sensitive, D. There is a decreased risk of jackknifing. The correct answer is here, D. There is a decreased risk of jackknifing. Explanation. If a tractor is equipped with an anti-lock braking system, ABS, but the trailer is not, the risk of jackknifing will be reduced and the driver should still be able to maintain steering control. If only the trailer is equipped with ABS, it is less likely that the trailer will swing out to one side. Question number 189. When you have a dual air brake system, each system controls either the A. Left or right, B. Top or bottom, C. Driver or passenger side, D. Front or rear. The correct answer is here, D. Front or rear. Explanation. Dual air brake systems have two sets of brakes, one in the front and one in the rear. However, these systems operate from a single set of brake controls. Question number 190. The service brake system applies A. The parking brake when you use the parking brake control, B. The brakes when you depress the brake pedal during normal driving, C. The brakes in an emergency. The correct answer is here, B. The brakes when you depress the brake pedal during normal driving. Explanation. Air brakes are actually three braking systems in one: the emergency brake, the parking brake, and the service brake. As these terms suggest, when you depress the brake pedal in normal driving, it's the service brake system that applies the brakes. Question number 192. Excessive heat caused by overuse of the service brakes can cause A. The modulating control valve to wear out, B. The brakes to fade, C. The brake linings to split. The correct answer is here, B. The brakes to fade. Explanation. Excessive heat caused by overuse of the brakes can expand the brake drums away from the brake pads or shoes and affect the brake lining, reducing friction. The brakes will fade, lose their effectiveness. On a long or steep downgrade, rely on engine braking more than the service brakes. Question number 193. A converter dolly with anti-lock brakes, ABS, is required to have A. A yellow lamp on the left side, B. A white lamp on the left side, C. A white lamp on the right side. The correct answer is here, A. A yellow lamp on the left side. Explanation. A converter dolly with anti-lock brakes is required to have a yellow ABS lamp on its left side. All converter dollies built since the 1st of March, 1998 have anti-lock brakes. Question number 194. Your vehicle has a dual air brake system. One of the systems loses air pressure. What will happen? A. The manual slack adjusters will not be set properly. B. Either the front or rear brakes will not be fully operational. C. The emergency brakes will come on immediately. The correct answer here, B. Either the front or rear brakes will not be fully operational. Explanation. A dual air brake system has two separate air brake systems, each with its own air tanks, hoses, lines, etc. Typically, one system operates the brakes on the rear axle, S, and the other system operates the brakes on the front axle. If one of the systems loses air pressure, either the front or the rear brakes won't work properly. As a result, your vehicle's braking distance will increase. If this happens, stop your vehicle and get the system fixed. Continued braking would soon cause the spring brakes to come on. Question number 195. How do you know if your vehicle is equipped with anti-lock brakes? A. There will be a red ABS malfunction lamp on the instrument panel. B. There will be a red ABS malfunction lamp on the left side of the vehicle. C. There will be a red ABS malfunction lamp on the right side of the vehicle. D. There will be a yellow ABS malfunction lamp on the instrument panel. The correct answer is here, D. There will be a yellow ABS malfunction lamp on the instrument panel. Explanation. Vehicles with ABS have yellow malfunction lamps to tell you if something isn't working. Tractors, trucks, and buses will have yellow ABS malfunction lamps on the instrument panel. Question number 196. The cutout level and cut-in level for the air compressor governor are roughly what pressure per square inch? C. A. 100 C and 80 C. B. 150 C and 125 C. C. 150 C and 100 C. D. 125 C and 100 C. The correct answer is here, D. 125 C and 100 C. Explanation. The governor determines when the air compressor will stop and start. This is typically referred to as cutout for stop and cut-in for start. When the pressure per square inch, C, reaches roughly 125 C, the governor stops the compressor. When the pressure falls below roughly 100 C, the governor starts the compressor again. Question number 197. In what instances should you not use the parking brakes when parking? A. When the emergency brake is turned on. B. Always use the parking brakes when parking. C. If you are on level ground. D. If the brakes are very hot or very wet in freezing temperatures. The correct answer is here, D. If the brakes are very hot or very wet in freezing temperatures. Explanation. Parking brakes can be damaged if used while they are very hot. If they are used while wet in freezing conditions, they can freeze, causing you to not be able to move your vehicle. Question number 198. Before you drive a vehicle with a dual air brake system, wait until the pressure in each system reaches at least A. 100 C, B. 120 C, C. 80 C. The correct answer is here, A. 100 C. Explanation. Before you drive a vehicle with a dual air brake system, wait until the air compressor has raised the air pressure to at least 100 C in both the primary and secondary systems. Watch the primary and secondary supply pressure gauges, or needles, if the system has two needles in one gauge. Question number 199. In a dual air brake system, which parts of braking does each system typically operate? A. One system operates the brakes on the rear axles. The other operates the regular brakes on the front axle and the trailer. B. One system operates the brakes on the front and rear axles. The other operates the brakes on the trailer, and possibly a rear axle. C. One system operates the brakes on the rear axles and the trailer. The other operates the regular brakes on the front axle, and possibly a rear axle. D. One system operates the brakes on the rear axles. The other operates the regular brakes on the front axle, and possibly a rear axle. Both supply air to the trailer. The correct answer is here. D. One system operates the brakes on the rear axles. The other operates the regular brakes on the front axle, and possibly a rear axle. Both supply air to the trailer. Explanation. There is a primary and secondary system. The primary usually operates the regular brakes on the rear axles and the secondary usually operates the regular brakes on the front axle, and possibly a rear axle. Both systems send air to the trailer brakes. Question number 200. The application pressure gauge, A, shows the temperature of air being used in the braking system. B, shows the pressure of the air coming from the compressor. C, shows the number of times the brakes have been used. D, shows how much air pressure is being applied to the brakes. The correct answer is here. D, shows how much air pressure is being applied to the brakes. Explanation. In an air brake system, the application pressure gauge shows how much air pressure is being applied to the brakes. Not all vehicles with an air brake system have this gauge. Question number 201. With air brakes, there is an added delay when stopping. What causes this? A, the time required for the air brake system to measure the correct amount of pressure to send to each wheel. B, the time required for the compressed air to engage the push rod. C, the time required for compressed air to build up enough pressure to engage the brakes. D, the time required for the air to flow through the lines to the brakes. The correct answer is here. D, the time required for the air to flow through the lines to the brakes. Explanation. With hydraulic brakes, the brakes work instantly, but with air brakes, there is about a 0.5 second delay while the air flows through the lines to the brakes before the brakes begin working. Question number 202. What factor can cause brakes to fade or fail? A, driving in a heavy rain. B, driving in heavy traffic. C, excessive use of emergency brake. D, excessive use of service brakes. The correct answer is here. D, excessive use of service brakes. Explanation. Braking creates heat, but brakes are designed to take a lot of heat. However, brakes can fade or fail from excessive heat caused by using them too much and not relying on the engine braking effect. Question number 203. How do drum brakes primarily differ from disc brakes? A, drum brakes have one chamber. Disc brakes have two or more chambers. B, drum brakes use an S-clamp. Disc brakes use a C-clamp. C, drum brakes use two counter-rotating drums, or one drum is stationary. To apply braking force, disc brakes separate the brake shoes using a disc. D, drum brakes use an S-clamp to separate the brake shoes against the drum. Disc brakes use a caliper to squeeze the brake pads against the disc. The correct answer is here. D, Drum brakes use an S-cam to separate the brake shoes against the drum. Disc brakes use a caliper to squeeze the brake pads against the disc. Explanation. Air pressure is used the same way in both braking systems. The standard control valves, relays, and piping work on either system. Drum brakes use air pressure to rotate an S-cam, which causes brake shoes to press against the inside of the drum. Disc brakes use air pressure to squeeze a caliper, which causes brake pads to squeeze against the outside of the disc. A tiny number of older drum brake systems use a wedge to separate the shoes, instead of an S-cam, but the operating principles are the same. Wedge systems are obsolete. Disc brakes are uncommon on trucks, but you should be able to spot a disc system and identify the basic parts. Question number 204. What can a leak in the air brake system cause? A. Backup generators to fill the emergency air tanks. B. A loss of pressure in all braking systems. C. The service brake system to retain minimal usability. D. The springs in the spring braking system to apply the brakes. The correct answer is here, D. The springs in the spring braking system to apply the brakes. Explanation. When the air brake system has a leak, the air is let out of the system. This air is what holds the springs back, which means the spring brakes will be applied when the air is released. Question number 205. Checking the manual slack adjusters on the S-cam brakes should be done during what step of the basic 7-step inspection procedure? A. Step 7. Start the engine and check brake system. B. Step 2. Check engine compartment. C. Step 1. Do vehicle overview. D. Step 5. Do walk around inspection. The correct answer is here, D. Step 5. Do walk around inspection. Explanation. Checking the slack adjusters should be done while the vehicle is parked on level ground and the wheels are chocked. This falls under step 5, the walk around inspection. Question number 206. The braking power of the spring brakes. A. Increases when the service brakes are hot. B. Depends on whether the service brakes are in proper adjustment. C. Is unaffected by the condition of the service brakes. The correct answer is here, B. Depends on whether the service brakes are in proper adjustment. Explanation. The braking power of the spring brakes depends on whether the service brakes are in proper adjustment. If they are not, neither the service brakes nor the emergency parking brakes will work properly. Question number 207. Air tanks must be drained. A. To drain moisture and oil out of the tanks. B. To tell you how much air is in the tanks. C. To drain all the air out of the tanks. The correct answer is here, A. To drain moisture and oil out of the tanks. Explanation. Water and oil from the compressor can collect in the air tanks and must be drained daily to prevent brake failure. Question number 208. What is the most common type of foundation brakes? A. Disc brakes. B. Shoe brakes. C. Wedge brakes. D. S-cam drum brakes. The correct answer is here, D. S-cam drum brakes. Explanation. There are several types of foundation brakes, but the most common type is the S-cam drum brakes. Question number 210. Dollies equipped with ABS are required to have malfunction lamps located where? A. On the rear. B. On the front. C. On the top. D. On the left side. The correct answer is here. D. On the left side. Explanation. A dolly equipped with an anti-lock braking system, ABS, is required to have a yellow malfunction lamp located on its left side. Question number 211. Slack adjusters on S-cam brakes need adjustment if they move more than 2 inches where the push rod attaches. A. False. B. True. The correct answer is here. B. True. Explanation. When inspecting slack adjusters, turn off the parking brakes so you can't move the slack adjusters. Use gloves and pull hard on each slack adjuster that you can reach. If a slack adjuster moves more than about 1 inch where the push rod attaches to it, it probably needs adjustment. Adjust it or have it adjusted. Question number 212. The air storage tanks, A. Hold only enough air for 1 braking cycle. B. Do not hold air unless there is an emergency. C. Hold enough air for the brakes to be used several times if the compressor stops working. The correct answer is here. C. Hold enough air for the brakes to be used several times if the compressor stops working. Explanation. The air storage tanks in an air brake system store compressed air to be used for braking. They hold enough air for the brakes to still be used several times if the compressor stops working.